If you were born with Saturn in the 10th house, this video is for you. We will talk about the challenges it brings, the karmic lessons it carries, as well as best ways of integrating it and making it more friendly. Let's dive in. My name is Anastasia. I'm a traditional Western astrologer and astrology teacher. If you enjoy my work, please take a few seconds to leave me a like, a comment, subscribe, press the notification bell, explore my channel, watch more videos. This is how YouTube algorithm knows to show my content to more people. It acts more friendly. In turn, it encourages me to create more content for you, so it's a win-win. If you want to say thank you, there's also a way to buy me a tea, a coffee, a croissant, a token of appreciation. I am thankful for every one of you, even if you're just here to watch and send me happy thoughts. Thank you for that. Before we dive in, like I mentioned, I am also an astrology teacher. I teach classes. There is a natal astrology course. Visit my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com, to find more information, to learn more about yourself. And I think through self-knowledge, through self-awareness, the confidence builds and the world becomes your ally, so that your strengths are used to their advantage and your weaknesses are transformed to help you make your life better. So check out my classes on my website. Additionally, you can book a reading at anastasiadoesastrology.com and get your natal chart looked at, or we can look at your year to come. There is also the solar return option that is best done right around your birthday. Relationship consultation, where we can compare, contrast two charts, look at compatibility. I can also help you elect the right time for your wedding or an important life event, as well as decipher the map of the world telling you where is the best place for you to live. So, as all of that can be found on my website. In this video, we're talking about Saturn in the 10th house. This is the 10th video in the series. I've been taking Saturn on a ride through all the houses, and it's been a lot of fun. I am learning a lot. This video series is based on Liz Green's book titled Saturn: A New Look at an Old Devil. A really great book to check out. If you're not an astrologer, it may feel a little dense, but I think it's still quite insightful because Saturn gets a lot of stigma. Saturn is classically connected to death and old age and restrictions that we face as we get older, or we face poverty, or we face rejection, denial. So oftentimes the darker side of Saturn gets emphasized, and so there is a lot of fear. However, Saturn is not all that. Saturn is the greatest teacher, right? And the way Saturn teaches us is oftentimes by showing us the reality of life. We have, on one side, we have Jupiter, and on the other side, we have Saturn. And Jupiter is this optimistic, jolly, everything is gonna get better guy. And Saturn is like, no, we're all gonna die type of guy. And we need to know that we're gonna die, right? Because if we don't know that we're gonna die, we're gonna go into a burning building. We're gonna cross the street in front of a car. We're gonna not save any money for our retirement. Saturn is here to remind us that no matter how great things are, they will potentially get, I feel like I'm trying to sell Saturn to you, but it's not quite working out. But it's true, like, you know, Saturn protects us. You need to save money to buy a house, right? You need to go through some toxic relationships to get better at dating. So Saturn is, as Liz Green says, is, you know, connected to the way individual may utilize the experiences of pain, restriction, and discipline as a means of greater consciousness and fulfillment. And just in the ways that it brings restriction and greater discipline, so does it bring rewards, because Saturn will be the planet that will help you buy a home, that will be, you know, it will be the planet that will allow you to climb the professional ladder and reach success. Speaking of professional ladder, with Saturn in the 10th house, if this is your natal placement, we are entering the realm of career, status, reputation. 10th is an angular house we have angular, cadent, and succedent houses in astrology, and angular are the ones that are literally at the angles of the chart, right? So to speak. The chart is circular, but it's, you know, the first, the seventh, the fourth, and 10th houses, and they are traditionally the ones that answer important questions. In the first house, you wonder, who are you? In the seventh house, you ask someone, who are you with? In the fourth house, you might ask one, where you live, or where you're coming from, what your family was like. And then in the 10th house, it's all about, what do you do for a living? Which is one of the first questions we ask people we meet. That's like a really, really important part of our life. And oftentimes, 10th house also holds the midheaven, and midheaven is the point of culmination of the sun. It is the highest point in the sky the sun will reach before it starts setting. So similarly, in the individual's life, the sun, 10th house, even if it doesn't hold the midheaven, if in whole sign your midheaven falls in the 9th or the 10th, the 10th house and midheaven both represent the point of culmination in the individual life, something they get known for, something they become sort of famous for. And if you are, if you're watching this and you really want to understand more about houses and aspects and planets, check out my courses. Like I mentioned, I also teach astrology. So 10th house is the place of achievement. It's the place of highest honor and regard in society. It's the place where you will be known, right? Depending on which planets are in your 10th house, it may determine the role you play, the sort of desires you have professionally. Like if your moon is in the 10th house, you will potentially want to have a job that nurtures, feeds, supports other people. Moon in the 10th house, often symbolic of caretakers, social workers, people working in the food industry, etc. So 10th house is all about outward image in the world and your professional success. A lot of times it also describes like the inner goal and something you maybe aspire, the meaning you seek in the world. Additionally, 10th house as the house opposite the 4th very much holds the parents or the kind of ideals that your parents have raised you with professionally. But oftentimes 10th house is more connected to the mother versus the 4th house is representative of the father. And the logic behind that is the 10th house is the most visible. And with the mother, it's pretty obvious who your mother is because she carries you, right? She gives you birth. So mother is naturally tends to be more visible, and your mother's influence might be more crucial when it comes to shaping your social attitudes and ethics and, kind of her being more prominent, I guess, in terms of social values. So what happens with Saturn in the 10th house? A few things, right? If we're talking about Saturn in the 10th house as the mother, right? It's sort of worth looking at the mother and the relationship with the mother. And I'm sort of going right in straight for the most important part of it, I think. But with Saturn in the 10th house, a lot would depend on the rest of the planets, right? We are just looking at Saturn, but more often than not, you will have Saturn in something else. You will have Saturn making aspects. That's why you need to get a professional reading so the astrologer can interpret all the ties between planets together. If you'd like one, AnastasiaDoesAstrology.com. My website has a variety of options. But with Saturn alone in the 10th house, let's just assume Saturn is there. Mother tends to be a more dominant parent. Sometimes it's because she's born with this very sort of authoritative, strong personality. Sometimes it's because she's forced to be a dominant parent because maybe the father has passed away or the father is absent, right? So a child with Saturn in the 10th house may grow up with some kind of stern, authoritative mother who is not the warmest, right? Or the most empathetic. She might be very focused on you kind of following the rules and behaving properly and maybe speaking when necessary and things like that. Sometimes, sometimes you might get like a mother who outwardly projects this very feminine exterior, but internally she has like a very strong drive. Or there might also be a sense of like the mother being like very heavy karma around mothers, I'd say. Like there might be like a mother who's also somewhat like a burden, right? Or maybe she's ill or sick or, deals with some kind of difficulty. So as the child grows, right? If this is you, please share. Sometimes where Saturn sits, we may be very sort of kind of have strong boundaries and may sort of be like, no, our family is perfect, but whose family is perfect, really? So oftentimes this sort of mother that is very strong and dominant, or often maybe is a single parent, right, results in, it affects both sort of men and women, both sort of, like as we grow up, it tends to affect us. So for a man, he might be someone who like doesn't trust women, or sort of sees women as these like harsh and cold personalities because his mother was like that. For a woman, it can also suggest that the woman would learn the behavior from her mother and potentially will also grow up becoming outwardly very feminine, but like inwardly maybe having like sort of strong goals. And sometimes if she doesn't express those goals, she tries to maybe project them on the partner or a child, like a mother who sends the child to like a pageant and something like that, or maybe she becomes like consciously sort of aggressive herself, right? So as a child grows up with this, there is often a strong kind of desire to separate, I think, from that and sort of achieve a lot. And oftentimes the more person's identity was suppressed when they were young, the more they had to follow the rules that were stern, and the more they dealt with like rejection, the stronger they will feel a desire to prove themselves. It's like, I want to be successful against all odds. You told me not to be a certain way, I will be that way, right? Like there is a very, very strong like ambition with this placement. And oftentimes it's not even necessarily like ambition in terms of like achieving certain things, but it's like more the need to prove things to others and like become an individual in its own right. Saturn in the 10th will, of course, present limitations, obstacles, difficulties, and like a very long climb, oftentimes professionally. But simultaneously, because there is that strong desire to kind of reach success no matter what, there is a determination to succeed and just sort of, get sort of through all obstacles. And so, yeah, like even if your mother was like very warm and loving, I think there still would have been, because again, 10th house is exactly above the 4th, right? So 10th and 4th, they form this axis of like mother, father, childhood, and like present life. And the influence of childhood is very, very strong in our life when it comes to career. So often, I think, you can probably, oops, sorry, the screen is shaking a little bit because I'm moving. But you may see in lives of very successful people that they've had to go through a lot of hardship and a lot of rejection when they were younger, because a lot of times if we get a childhood that is like picture perfect and we're allowed to be whoever we are, sometimes people don't have such a strong desire to go out there and like change the world, because they're like, well, I'm pretty happy being my true self. I know who I am. People support me, right? Life is great. So the more I think the person's ability to be themselves is denied, the more it returns in terms of this like doubled force of, reach sort of goals and overcome all obstacles. Sometimes with Saturn in the 10th house, there might be this perception that maybe your soul has chosen the obstacles, around you and the life circumstances, because it wanted to fulfill an important mission. And with Saturn in the 10th house, you are bound to, like, your kind of life purpose, and speaking of like integration, is to bring change into the world. It is to achieve some kind of like, influence in the group context. And mostly it's not for material gains, which early in life Saturn can really, again, sort of very, very much focus you on, like, making a living, being traditionally successful, being sort of more conservative. But it is more about like sort of changing the world somehow, and like being that person that shows others what is possible. And before you get there, you will for sure get some kind of difficulties, right? And some like inner tension, and that maybe even like early life struggle. What is beautiful with Saturn is, together with that sort of intense desire to succeed, comes a strong sense of purpose and strong sense of responsibility, and maybe even a sense of fate that your professional sort of, or even public life, is meant to change the world somehow. Yet the path is very long, right? With this placement, you kind of have to be ready that there's going to be like sacrifice and hard work, and maybe early in life also like a sense of not being compensated enough, or a sense that like you want like strong kind of control issues, I think, and sort of strong opinions about certain things, and almost like becoming like a parent maybe you disliked, and then realizing that there is another way, that you don't have to repeat the sort of paths your parents have gone through. Because if we do look at it from this perspective that your soul has chosen the body and has chosen the experiences you have been through in life, then it brought you here to actually experience them, and through them reach the fullest potential. So as you integrate the pain, as you cut the umbilical cord and separate yourself from your childhood and from people that have restricted you, the more you can find that like larger reason behind your ambition and your desire. Basically, it's not just about you, right? Like, it's about making the world a better place. So dealing with workaholic tendencies is a danger here, right? Oftentimes Saturn does bring pretty great achievement. However, again, if you're working for the man or you're working for the paycheck, it's not going to bring as great of a satisfaction. Only once you have found the meaning of the work on a deeper level, you will truly start to feel successful. What is interesting here, and I've been talking my friends and my boyfriend's ear off about it, but Saturn in the 10th can, especially if it's Saturn that is afflicted, which is Saturn in Leo, Saturn in Cancer, Saturn in Aries. And I have a candle for that. I have Saturn in Aquarius, which is Saturn in rulership candle that can help you, improve Saturnian influence. So check it out. There's still a few left on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. But if you have Saturn that is afflicted, it can bring fall from power. It can bring this like strong drive and motivation and hard work, full of setbacks and delays, and then success, but then sort of fall from power. And this exists in the charts of a couple of pretty prominent figures. So we have Hitler and Charlie Chaplin. So for Hitler, his Saturn is actually conjunct the midheaven. It's not in the 10th house, but because midheaven is the angle of career success, of sort of like highest point in life, it is very much similar, right? Like, even if you're born with Saturn in the 11th house and your midheaven is in the 11th, and I use whole sign. In Placidus, midheaven will always be the 10th house beginning. So Hitler, right? He had a very difficult upbringing. There was a lot of difficulty with the father. Father passed away. The mother died relatively early. So there is a sense of like emotionally impoverished childhood. And so we all know how that turned out, right? And how there was that sort of determination to change the world. It was completely misguided and terribly devastating to the rest of the world, right? And so his Saturn was in Leo. Saturn is in its detriment in Leo, and so the sort of this desire to change the world, it was like a detrimental desire. It wasn't sort of highly guided. It was potentially very ego driven, and not every Saturn in Leo is going to manifest that way. That's why you need to look at the entire chart, but it's definitely more difficult with Leo, Cancer, or Aries Saturn here in the 10th specifically. And so his fall from power with a mutual suicide with his wife is also a known fact. Another person that is born days apart from Hitler is Charlie Chaplin, which is a person who lived much longer and, a very known, well-known actor. Similar story of poverty and hardship. He had childhood in London with a lot of sort of difficulty. Father was absent, mother struggled financially. He had to go to a workhouse twice before the age of 9. His mother was committed to a mental asylum when he was 14. So like when your life starts off like that, you're gonna be, more often than not, there's gonna be like such a strong desire for like overcoming it. And so he had a crazy long career, been America's sweetheart, like all around the world, right? Speaking of Hitler, he actually I think modeled his own mustache on Chaplin, and then Chaplin also played Hitler, and both of them are born, like I said, only days apart. And so they both have Saturn. And for Chaplin, Chaplin was a Scorpio rising, I believe, with Saturn in the 10th. Yeah, he was a Scorpio rising. Hitler was a Libra rising. Very sort of insane, to look at their charts. I find it sort of, especially since, both of them have died, and you can have a whole history of their lives. But Chaplin reached success. And then later, there was a lot of controversy. There were a lot of lawsuits. There was a decline in popularity. There was a lot of judgment over him marrying women that were 15, 16, 17. So similarly, right, sort of not, of course, as sort of devastating as Hitler's, but still, there was a climb to power, and then there was a subsequent sort of fall. Another person that has this is Miley Cyrus, but for her, Saturn is in rulership. She's born with Saturn in Aquarius, which automatically gives her a bit more of a nobility, I guess, or at least let's call it the clarity of purpose, and maybe more social purpose. So she's pretty young still, and I don't know a whole ton about her, but I think she definitely comes across as someone quite ambitious. So if if you have this placement, please share. I would really, really want to know how this shows up in your life. So, okay, other things, there may be a very strong self-consciousness with this placement and great sensitivity to the public's opinion. In personal relationships, maybe you're completely relaxed or fine, but then when it comes to career and public opinions, you can be very sensitive and actually at times maybe prone to situations that are a little bit more embarrassing. Again, more so if it is Saturn in Leo, Cancer, or Aries. Check out my Saturn in Aquarius candle or oil as ways of remediation. And during a reading, we can also discuss possible personal ways of remediating this placement. So yeah, fear of public humiliation, which can sometimes mean avoiding the spotlight while simultaneously having that insane desire for recognition. There may be more sort of conservative approach to life, or at least in a visible public way, more conservative approach to things. And again, if we look, Chaplin was in the silent films, and Hitler was extremely conservative with his attitude, just one nation deserves to live, right? Which I don't even know, it's crazy, and you wouldn't call it conservative, you would call it just crazy, I think. But history is there to teach us what not to do and who not to elect as our guides as our presidents, etc. Okay, let's not dive too much into politics. I feel like it gets sad. Yeah, so generally, you know, all other things apart, like the person has the drive to reach success. There may be a desire to be independent professionally because you would be better suited to the position of like a business owner or even a manager, producer in the film industry, for example. You wouldn't enjoy working under someone else. And so, yeah, like I think even if your Saturn is in a more difficult placement, difficult sign, you can still direct that energy towards something noble and something outside of yourself. So how do we integrate it? We start with self-honesty, right? We start with taking a look at the past, understanding that whatever happened, it doesn't affect us. Needing to reevaluate the male and female roles, then examine how maybe your parental influence affected your relationships and even maybe your strong desire to be like in control, so the early circumstances of your life do not repeat. And then seeing Saturn as an opportunity, seeing Saturn as, you know, an opportunity to learn and to create more purpose in your life and sort of take responsibility that you have more kind of knowledge and you have this like chosen path to make the world a better place. Saturn oftentimes will teach you a lot of diplomacy and statesmanship, as long as the sense of compassion, and will teach you that it's not about reaching the peak, reaching the position of power. It's not about making a certain amount of money, because all of that will pass. All of that will fall apart with old age and death. But your success can actually live forever as a demonstration to other people that it is possible. So understanding that your mission is to kind of give shape to some kind of group project, group idea, and again, make the world a better place is very much important here. So this is it about Saturn in the 10th. I feel like every time these videos just get longer and longer. Please let me know how this has been in your life. And if you're seeking more, visit anastasiadoesastrology.com and we can talk about anything your heart desires. Thank you for watching. I'll talk to you soon.